Hello and welcome to Michigan Fresh Fish Celebration webinar. I'm your host, Dr. Lauren Juskovich. Today, you'll hear a story of how we spent the last year developing a seafood consumer education campaign in order to educate Michiganders about our local fish production, or rather our state's aquaculture and commercial fishing industries. I'll spend these first few minutes giving some background that will build up to the main story shared by Mr. Matt Monty. His story will transport us from just 1 year ago to where we are today, looking out onto the horizon with Michigan Fresh Fish. So without further ado, let's dive on in. So of course, we would like to take a minute to acknowledge that the Great Lakes watershed is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands and waters of Indigenous nations. As original caretakers of our region's lands, waters, and life beings, we are most grateful to all our relatives. We'd like to thank you for your continued care of the water and foodways in partnership with fish in our communities in the Great Lakes. Although sovereign nations, tribes, also play a critical role in Michigan's seafood story. We will save that story for another day. So I'd like to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to defining what is aquaculture and commercial fishing. So what is aquaculture? Well, aquaculture, also called fish farming or fish culture, is the rearing of aquatic species using human activities to enhance growth. The most often thought of as farming in Michigan is typically one of our state hatcheries. Aquaculture is very complex as each farm looks different than the next. For example, a farm can use a specific system or infrastructure, species in which the U.S. raises over 150 species, or one of 5 end products such as food, stocking, bee fishing, bait, and ornamentals or pet fish. So there's a possibility of over about 2,200 combinations. So needless to say, aquaculture can look a little murky. But it's not impossible, mostly because Michiganders can bond over food, which is the most common product produced from the aquaculture market in the Midwest. Most farms also diversify their sales by producing stocking fish in addition to food fish. And almost half of the farms in the Midwest use ponds to grow their fish. So while aquaculture can have many different products for the market, commercial fishing is solely for seafood production or fish as food. Commercial fishing, or wild caught fish from the waters in the Great Lakes, is the harvesting of large volumes of various fish species for commercial profit. Michigan state licensed commercial fishery works across all 4 Great Lakes touching the state of Michigan, in which their harvest is approximately 2 million pounds per year, with almost 90% of their catch to that of the delicious lake whitefish. 1 out of every 2 commercial fishermen in the Great Lakes also processes their own fish and provides value-added products such as fish fillets, smoked fish, and smoked fish dip. So you might be asking, well, Lauren, why are you hosting today? Well, I'd like to share that I'm an extension educator with Michigan State University Extension and Michigan Sea Grant. Michigan Sea Grant helps to foster economic growth and protecting Great Lakes coastal resources throughout Michigan through a program that is both at Michigan State University and University of Michigan. And we do this through research, education, and outreach. The directive from NOAA is through 4 focus areas, one of which is the sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, which I work in. And so therefore, my role is to work in partnership with those who work with Michigan's aquaculture, commercial fishing, and seafood processing industries. For example, at the beginning of COVID, I worked with fellow Sea Grant Great Lakes Network to develop the Great Lakes Fresh Fish Finder. This is a way for consumers to directly find and connect with fish producers while wholesale markets like restaurants were shut down and retail became the dominant market for food. So check it out. Also during COVID, NOAA offered COVID relief through federal CARES Act funds. And so this became a readily available total annual revenue information for commercial fishing, aquaculture, charter fishing, and processor sectors throughout the Great Lakes states to allocate relief funding for Great Lakes states. And so I'm going to go through a CARES Act timeline, and these are federal funds that were allocated for these industries. And as of March 2020, which nobody wants to go back there, but CARES Act 1, Great Lakes was not included in these relief funds. In December 2020, CARES Act 2 was passed with Great Lakes included. Approximately $15 million was allocated to the Great Lakes states, with approximately $6.6 billion to Michigan specifically. In the summer of 2021, Michigan DNR developed a state spend plan on allocating those funds to these different industries, and the spend plan was approved by NOAA. In December 2021, applications were mailed out to those with state licenses. And in spring 2022, applications were received, reviewed, and then the Great Lakes Fishery Commission sent out direct payments as of May and June 2022. And then, there was still some excess in funds as of August 2022. So Michigan DNR developed a state plan addendum for remaining funds, in which 1 year addendum was approved by NOAA, and this encompasses today's talk. And so specifically for today's story, these federal funds were allocated to develop and implement a marketing campaign used with a consultant who you'll hear from today. I worked to help facilitate these feedback loops and specific needs with producers, as well as bringing a sustainable framework for creating assets after these funds were spent. And so Michigan aquaculture and the commercial fishing industry really they're small and mighty, and yet stood together for the first collaboration for marketing this year, to bring awareness that their industries exist, that they are people in Michigan, that they not only work, but they're part of our communities. And so their messages are simple: come meet them, learn more about them. They're pretty approachable, but they're really your neighbors, and they want to make sure that we're feeding Michigan with Michigan. And so with that, I invite Matt Monty to turn on his camera, and I'll end my fishy prelude, and we'll jump aboard the marketing campaign. So take it away, Matt.
Thank you, Lauren. Very excited to be here with everyone. And I'll go ahead and share screen, and we will dive right in. All right, I'm Matthew Monty. I founded Monty Consulting Company about 23 years ago, and this has been one of the most exciting projects we've worked on. I want to thank Lauren for spearheading so much of it, and Michigan Sea Grant folks for being remarkable collaborators. I've done a lot of public partnership type work, and this is the best collaboration we've ever had, as well as with MAA and MFPA. It's really incredible. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do with this campaign. And first was build awareness. Number one, as Lauren mentioned, we want to humanize these folks. I would say, talking to them, we heard through our research that they felt sort of invisible, that people didn't know they were there, and that they wanted just people to be aware that, hey, we exist. We want to feed people the food that we produce. We want to sell our products. And that's really the number one objective that they told us. And I said, well, what about raising prices and getting more money for your food and all these things, the kind of marketing things we often do? And they said, yes, but it meant, equally as much, if not more, to them to just have that awareness at all levels that they exist and that they're important as a part of feeding Michigan. So we wanted to educate the public and inform them. And that's public of all ages, kids, adults, help them establish firsthand relationships, both with specific people, but also at sort of the industry level with the public of Michigan, and then promote both, fish production and support, support, the idea that producing sustainably food in Michigan for Michiganders is a good thing, and that fish is a healthy source of protein, and that there's a lot of great reasons to consume fish, and then to not have this be a flash in the pan, but a long-term durable asset creation process, so that we would do some things that would be temporary to help move the message forward initially, but that we would do many other things that would sustain the visibility of the Michigan Fresh Fish campaign into the future, both at the level of individual organizations and at the educational level through Michigan Sea Grant. So how do we do this? There won't be too many word slides, I promise, but a little bit here. Branding. What is the core visual identity that we're going to connect everything to? Like you see here in my slide background, my video background here, the Michigan Fresh Fish logo. Research, understanding the truth of the producers and the truth of the residents of Michigan and what they care about. How do we turn that into language that's effective at connecting these people? And then build that out by collaborating with Michigan Sea Grant on their webpage, so that it would be sort of evergreen content that they can utilize into the future. Some advertising, which is by necessity not long-term, but span through the project. And then an expo where we introduce them to the public, both the fish farmers and the commercial fishers, and then developing these long-term durable assets that can be leveraged in the future. So the brand, what were we going to call this? So even deciding on Michigan Fresh Fish as a word and a name, and connecting that to existing regional initiatives that had already been undertaken. So the Great Lakes Fresh Fish Finder was an existing brand. Michigan Fresh Fish, we wanted to be sort of like a cousin or a sibling to that we could see. There was a fair bit of discussion over the shape of the fish cut out in the Michigan background. Yes, when people care about fish, they care about fins and shapes and all sorts of things that me as an outsider would not quite comprehend until I'd been in that discussion. So we wanted to have that appeal and connect it to the existing brands. And so that brings us to research. We often think of really good marketing as connecting the truth of one group of people with the truth from another. That could be a business with the public. In this case, it's the truth of the Michigan fish farmers and the Michigan commercial fishers with the truth of the Michigan public. And so how do we bring them together? We need to understand the providers, the producers of the products, and then we also need to understand how to connect them better to the public. This is James from Cedar Brook Trout Farm. This is photography that my colleague Kaisa took of them moving some of their fish from one part of the raceway to another. And we got to see a lot of beautiful sights in doing our research. So we went and interviewed the fish farmers. We went and spent time talking to commercial fishers, and spent a day. I spent a day on one of the commercial fishing vessels up here in the Keweenaw. And we then also went and visited 3 fish farms and took video and interviews. We then developed a survey to understand better how to best connect these people and their products to the public. And why did we do this? We want to make sure we've got the best language, the best ideas, the key imagery that's going to draw them together. And so this day out commercial fishing let me understand the kind of experience that commercial fishers have on a day-to-day basis, and the mix of incredible beauty of being out on the Great Lakes, doing their work, the very challenging labor, the hard work that they do, the risks that they take by being out on the water all day long. Lake Superior's cold. There's no kind of safe time to go overboard. And so these folks really do have an incredible sense of spirit and independence. And you'll see that we built that into some of the messaging, because some of what they said is we also need help with awareness to bring people in to work in our industry. They sometimes struggle to get people to work on these vessels. And so presenting it not just as we're feeding Michigan, but also, hey, this is for a certain kind of person. This tremendous independence is really an interesting, valuable thing. We also visited fish farms. Here's an aerial image of Cedar Brook Trout Farm in Harrisville. And a beautiful place, very innovative ways that they manage their water to keep it clean, to keep the fish healthy. And we got to understand both kind of all the engineering that they need to do that is contextualized to their own situations, And we spent time then producing and interviewing them on video. And so we're both capturing content to tell, to use in telling the story, while we understand and come to understand them as humans and sort of what makes them tick. And so that helped us understand the producer side. Then from the side of the public of Michigan, what do they care about? How do we connect these fairly small industries of hardworking, independent folks to the people of Michigan? And so we need to understand why do they care about fish? What can we use to get their attention? And so we surveyed 200 folks. About 30% of people in Michigan reported they eat once or twice a month. 21% eat fish weekly. So there's some real steady consumers of fish. And why did they eat that? From a marketing perspective, that's what we want to know. Taste, I just like it. Or health, I eat fish because it's a healthy source of protein, high in omega-3s, and so on. So when do I buy it? Why do I buy it? Price, freshness, and availability also influenced the purchase. And so the more we can do to help with price, with keeping it fresh and making it available and different kinds of fish available, that's going to help move more product. Interestingly, about 69% said that the source of fish is important. Where does it come from? What's the history of the fish? That was important to them. And 40% said, boy, if I could buy this from Michigan, I'd prefer to buy it if it came from Michigan versus somewhere else. So where do we intersect with them? Where is the mindset? Lauren touched on this. Where do they get their fish? And this is where the supermarket, 75% being shut down. Some of that innovation with the Great Lakes Fresh Fish Finder is a phenomenal response to try to reduce the friction. We want to close the distance between the producer and the consumer. And so where are they thinking about fish? In grocery stores, restaurants, 16% reported that they went and caught their own fish. And so that's great. But there's also 84% that they need someone else to get the fish for them. And that's where we see the Michigan Aquaculture Association and the Michigan Fish Producers Association being a key thing here. So once we understood that, we could roll those ideas into developing messages. We understand the motivation, and now what's the best language? And so we come up with, as marketers and creative services, with what we think are great ideas, good ways of saying these things. And we start to build them into some of our ads. We start with ads, digital ads first, because it lets us examine who clicks on what ad and how often do they click on which ad. And so you can see here an example of, buying fresh fish off to the right. This is some freshly cooked Michigan fish. Here is building awareness between serving Michigan fresh fish and where it comes from with the commercial fishers. And on the left, we have Dan out in his farm on one of the raceways, and this idea of proudly serving locally caught and locally produced fish. So we connect them with the public. Then we also have the idea of messaging around, what do they care about? They like to eat it. And so if we look at these three ads, you can think for a minute, not fishy, just delishy, get hooked on Michigan fresh fish, and then Mich Fish So Delish. One of these three ads is the top performing advertisement. And so this is one of the ways that we learn how to maximize the impact of our campaign, or the reach of our campaign, by testing ads in different images and with different language. And so in this case, if you guessed Mich Fish So Delish, that's correct. That was the highest performing ad, where we focused on the flavor aspects. Here's an example, health ads. One of these three ads was the top performing sort of health ad. And we have healthier hair, I like my fish baked, why Mich Fish, ninja speed, good reflexes, that type of thing. And in this case, the top performing ad was there on the left, why Mich Fish, healthier hair. I actually think it's primarily not the idea of hair, but the effectiveness of that particular photograph, which made it so effective. For building awareness, just that these industries exist, these people exist, we have a number of ads. We had many different ad combinations of messages, which would be our text, with the photography that we took, as well as video ads. And so we can see some examples here. And from these, there is also a top performer. And in this particular case, if you were to guess, you might think that beautiful sunrise shot, but in fact, it was all the way to the right. Forbes McDonald, one of the farms that we visited. This older gentleman, hard at work. It just, there's a real human story there that people connect to. And so we look at the performance of these ads and we see some of the click-through rates in terms of percentage times that the ad is clicked on versus how often it's served up as an ad. You know, and top performing 3.25%. This is partway through the campaign, 3.25%. So that's high percentage. And down here, you can see the little ad with the jumping young person at over 2% click-through rates. So those are pretty good results. We then took that information, that fact that Mish Fish So Delish was the top headline, that this particular cooked fish photo was the most clicked on, and we iterated the content of the landing page where those ads go, which is part of kind of a sub-site or a sub collection of pages on the Michigan Sea Grant website, and use that to make the page most effective. Okay, we continue that message, continue that headline, tell the story of why Michigan fish. Now, we also then, as I mentioned, when we visited these farms and while I was on the commercial fishing vessel, we utilized video to kind of capture their stories and a little bit of the day in the life. And we use those to collect video assets, which we built into a video for each industry. And we'll show you in just a moment the one from commercial fishing. It's about 1 minute and 10 seconds long. So in order to hear the audio correctly, I have to stop sharing my screen for just a moment so I can switch audio connections. So we'll be back in just a second with that video.
Our work is more than a job. It requires that we rise early, work hard, and respect nature's abundance. We meet the sun at daybreak and look out for each other when the going gets rough. We cherish nourishing the people of Michigan with fish from our Great Lakes. We're proud that families get healthy and strong from our products. We're proud to set our nets in these pristine waters, and the fish we deliver is the freshest in our state. Goodness knows this work is tough, but out here, on the water, we harvest more than just food. The bounty we share with you is our determination and spirit of independence. We are the commercial fishers of the great state of Michigan.
So I'll come back and we'll get back to our presentation. That's an example of the content we had prepared. And not only were we doing that as embedded videos, but we also utilized some of that content both to help the individual producers, but also as video advertisements on YouTube, for example. Some of the ads were simple search. If I search for Michigan fresh fish, you can see an example of a text ad here where people could click through, and we had some good results as a result of this. We started the digital ads on January 5th, having kind of collected our messaging, got our imagery together. And since January 5th, those advertisements generated 91 million views. This is strictly within the state of Michigan, okay? So no ads. The ads were targeting only people whose primary location setting was in Michigan, and that resulted in 91 million views, 641,000 clicks. We then, in March, started ads on social media as well. Those produced 1.3 million, we call them views, but social media likes to call it a reach of 1.3 million, and about 60,000 clicks generated there. So pretty substantial statistics that came out of these campaigns, a lot of visibility. Also, I believe 3,300 views of the videos. All of that then also culminated in building up interest in the public for the expo, the Michigan Fresh Fish Expo, which took place on the state capitol lawn on June 13th. And here, the MAA and the MFPA collaborated to work together to bring, Michigan fish production, all of those stories together firsthand with the public of Michigan on the Capitol lawn. That was promoted. You see on the right, those are some digital ads that went out promoting that it was going to be on the 13th and they could get fresh fish samples. We knew that the food was going to be a big magnet. There were signs put out around the Capitol area, the sandwich board that you see over on the left. And there was numerous activities and points of engagement. I'm going to start on the far left here. You can see one of the tents that was used for cooking and preparing the fish. That is from the Watersmeet Trout Hatchery. That's one of the assets that was produced, the durable assets that came out of this whole campaign. So we had fish being prepared and shared there. Then there were exhibitors from MAA and MFPA throughout inside the tent, as well as other people interested in fish from around the state. We can see the kind of Michigan Fresh Fish tent and brand wall over here on the right. And then here's an example of sort of the organic thing that we wanted to have happen. This is James from Cedar Brook Trout Farm speaking to someone, I'm not sure who, a member of the public, and discussing with them his experience as a fish farmer and some of the awareness and connections and relationships we wanted them to build. So we knew that fish being delicious was one of the motivators, and these folks know how to do delicious when it comes to fish. So, there was fresh trout and fresh whitefish prepared in various ways. It was a huge draw, and we had people lined up throughout the entire tent. And that idea of fish being a magnet came from the wisdom of MAA and MFPA. They knew that when they shared great product, that people would come from all around. And while they were waiting in line for their fish samples, the producers could talk to them. And so, examples of those kind of organic interactions taking place and storytelling about, what is commercial fishing? How do we do that? The history of commercial fishing and aquaculture. Here's Lauren being interviewed as part of that for radio. I know it made Michigan Public Radio. I heard it on my way back. I heard it probably 2 or 3 times on various radio stations around the state, not just the public ones, but regular commercial stations. And so it had a significant impact, I would say, in terms of generating interest and awareness. We had a selfie station. Here's my colleague Meredith taking images of folks in front of this little trap net boat, the way the boat slides underneath the net. And then that was a Polaroid camera, so they could walk away with a printed photograph. And the Polaroid camera itself was one of the stars of the show with the kids who had never seen that before. Example here, Amanda from Fishtown talking to people about commercial fishing and the history on the Great Lakes that she is so actively involved in preserving as a way of life. We further looked for ways to engage people so that they would have what we call anchor memories, an experience that's sensory rich, the smell of the food, the warmth of the food, the sounds of it cooking, the voices of the people, and in this case, a 360 virtual reality video, which was produced at Cedar Brook Trout Farm. And so you wear this headset, and wherever you look, it shows you what the video was in that direction, standing on one of their raceways. It was really incredible experience to see the farm in 360. Having been there and then putting on the VR, it was awesome. It was a great representation. I absolutely loved it. We also produced an aquaculture demonstration tank. This is a 150-gallon tank replete with some filtration and oxygenation and monitoring systems to illustrate how Michigan fish farmers grow some of the young fish, typically in these small tanks, before they mature up large enough to be in the raceways. Cedar Brook Trout Farm brought in 3 different kinds of trout. Here's James from Cedar Brook again. And we combined sort of some illustrations on the tank explaining that filtration with sort of the beauty of rainbow trout, brook trout, and brown trout. And that beauty then is also what we might call an anchor memory. And we can see that in this example of what we were hoping to have happen. A young person holding a Michigan fresh fish swag bag full of goodies, wondering at the beauty of these fish. So many people were up taking photographs of them. They absolutely were more interested in the fish than I imagined. So I love it when I get it wrong, and when people are more interested in things like fish than they would be. We combine that with the Michigan Fresh Fish logo and include then swag. So this is the Michigan Fresh Fish tent. This is one of the durable assets. Mish Fish, so delish. We keep the messaging that we know to be most effective as part of the outreach. And off to the left, you can see some of the Michigan Sea Grant folks doing a survey, talking to some of the 500 plus folks. We know we gave away over 500 sets of materials. The giveaways included a Michigan Fresh Fish stainless water bottle, some temporary tattoos, stickers, a Frisbee with Lauren's little jingle on it. I won't say any more about that. And some Post-it notes. There was also a handout that was sort of a kind of quick guide to the benefits of fish. Here we see the outcomes from that survey that I just mentioned. And in this case, there was 243 folks, so almost half of the at least 500 folks who were there took the survey. 90% answered that they would eat more fish as a result of attending the expo, so that's a significant result. And then they were also asked, what type of fish do you like to eat? Would you like to buy and be able to eat? Salmon was highest at about 27-28%. Perch and walleye tied for 18. Whitefish, I think, was 16, and other was a little bit less. So these are the kinds of fish that people reported they would like to be able to buy and consume. This moves us into sort of the durable assets. What's going to come out of this now that the advertising campaign is coming to an end? The expo, at least the first expo, if there's more, there might be more, is over. We have these durable assets, the things that we've designed, the messaging, the research outcomes. This is the Michigan Fresh Fish trailer, which is going to be out on the road with folks like Elliot and Lauren from Michigan Sea Grant using it for education. Inside of it will be the aquaculture display, and as well as like the Michigan Fresh Fish tent. We're outfitting the inside of it to be sort of purpose-built to transport those things. These were very popular. The stickers are like a big thing right now. I'm not quite sure why, but we go with it in marketing. When things are popular, we say yes. So we got a decal for restaurants or places where you can buy Michigan Fresh Fish. So proudly serving Michigan Fresh Fish is a nice big window decal that they can put on their windows or on their doorways. Support Michigan commercial fishermen, support your local fish farmer, very popular, as well as the Buy, Support, Eat Michigan with the nice little sunset. You can see we leveraged the ideas from the photography as well as that. Here we see the aquaculture placemat, which is going to be available for restaurants and places where fish is served. Where there's some coloring that can be done for the kids, as well as some educational content that Lauren helped us put together. It's based off a photograph from one of the fish farms, and that's sort of one of two. The other one is based on commercial fishing. So here's kind of coloring some of the different kinds of fish that are sometimes harvested using the trap net boat that we see up above, as well as showing kind of how the net goes over the back of these trap net vessels, as well as some scales and tails over here. In addition, we developed posters that combined a mix of awareness content with sustainability and health content. So these posters are going to be available moving into the future. We've got a health one off to the right with some very quick kind of snippets that support people understanding why eating fresh fish keeps them healthy. And then, as we said, awareness of both commercial fishers and fish farmers. Some of that content then repurposed into different aspect ratios to be sandwich boards that can be utilized, public places into the future. And then we also developed some materials for individual members of MAA or MFPA. Not all of them were interested in having some of these either developed or designed, but this is an example of rack cards that we did for Fishtown, as well as for Cedar Brook Trout Farm. Depending on how much direct public interaction determine, what kinds of marketing they want or we're not interested in having. This is just a sample. We didn't want to include too many, but there were assets designed for MAA. These are pop-up banners, that you can see at a trade show, for example. So if they reach out to the public or when they're meeting and attracting new members into MAA, this is an example of content that they can use. And then this was one of the design concept, the mock-ups that we did for Waters Meat Trout Hatchery for Dino there, and some of the sort of the design idea that eventually became reality. So what does this mean? What happens now down the road? There's still discussions going on, and that's what's exciting, was that the people involved are engaged with each other. MAA and MFPA, they're talking to each other. They're talking to the public. They're talking to folks throughout the state. Maybe a cookbook. We talked about, again, connecting them to the people. So maybe using recipes from the various families around the state that are involved in these industries. And then leveraging the durable assets so that the Michigan Fresh Fish campaign can kind of move on with those physical assets into the future. We want to keep telling the story that these people want to feed Michigan. They are part of our state. They're part of our history, as Lauren outlined. And we want them to be connected in building those relationships that can help the industry move forward, increase food security for the state, and improve the health. And just a big shout out and thank you to the MAA and MFPA folks, my staff for being so engaged and working hard on this and helping the campaign be successful. And this is the shot of the MAA folks and MFPA folks that kind of spearheaded it, keeping the expo moving ahead. And certainly Lauren's untiring efforts are an inspiration to all of us. So thank you, Lauren. And with that, I'll take whatever questions we can answer and try to be helpful with.
Thank you, Matt. That was a great overview of really the last year. It's kind of remarkable what we all kind of came up with, and your team especially kind of helped with the messaging and the research behind it, and kind of how we can make a bigger impact. So thank you so much for you and your team. And then, of course, all the producers and everybody who provided feedback along the way. And so we do have one question currently. If anybody else has any questions that they would like answered, feel free to put them in the Q&A. We'll see if we can do that. And so, Matt, referring to the Michigan Consumer Survey, what was the response rate? And what was the total number of participants that responded? So, and how was it stratified between urban and rural?
So we have answers to some of that. We basically did that with SurveyMonkey as a paid survey. So we asked for 200, and I think we got 215 or 206, something like that, a little over 200. And those were from throughout the state. They would have been stratified as far as like income distribution and male-female matching demographics. But I don't think we got geographic information as to the specific geographic breakdown. So I can't say that, that the 97% of the population that's below the bridge or whatever is got 97% of the responses. So I don't have a geographic distribution, but that would be how we reach that.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And then, this is a fun question. Who owns or controls the campaign assets?
So we designed it to be able to live on its own moving forward and be an asset that's primarily under the auspices of Michigan Sea Grant. That's where we put the web pages, for example, was on the Sea Grant website, essentially a microsite within the Michigan Sea Grant website. and so there isn't any sort of formal trademark or copyright on it to that end. But I don't know that there's been any idea of like how it's going to be limited moving forward. We want to see it continue to be leveraged and be useful to the fish producers throughout Michigan and for the educators for Michigan Sea Grant moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I will also add, so these were federal funds that were used, and so it is available, and we will also follow up with these additional resources and assets and kind of do like this collection of assets that anybody can access moving forward. And so there's other durable assets like the tent or that aquaculture demo tank, which, you know, you could just reach out to us, me or Elliot, and we can kind of get that in line if you have an event or some type of educational opportunity as well. All right. Are the ads available to share? So like the 1 minute ad here, and where can we find it?
Yeah, so those live on YouTube, and we can get, so they're publicly available videos, and we can get those links out to anyone and everyone who's interested. There's really some great storytelling. The structure of the video for the aquaculture fix, where we filmed at, you know, with Forbes McDonald and at Cedarbrook, and with Dan. Those videos we produced not with a voiceover, but using the recordings of the fish farmers themselves. And so the structure is a little bit longer. The storytelling is a little longer form, and it's a little less compact, right? And so it's a different approach. The two videos didn't use the same structure because we went with what we thought would be most effective, depending on what assets we could collect at the time. There was a question about any other pleasant surprises along the way. Yeah, it was incredible to watch people, how enthralled they were with seeing those trout firsthand. They often want to tell you their fish story when you're there with them. Fish bring out a lot of memories and a lot of connections that people have to discoveries they had or experiences they had as young people, I would say. As well as some of them have an enduring love for just fish in general, whether they're anglers or otherwise. The other one is that, you know, the incredible engineering that a lot of these fish farmers do to keep their systems reliable, to keep their fish healthy, and the kind of sense of always being on guard. They're very protective. Interviewing the commercial fish farmers, or one of the commercial fishermen, one of them said, because I'm always thinking from a marketing perspective, well, if we can increase demand, you can sell your fish at a higher price. And he said, well, sometimes that's okay. He said, but I don't want the price of my fish to be out of reach for the people in my community. And that told me this person isn't out there just to make a dollar, right? To maximize revenues or maximize, stakeholder value. What they were out to do is to feed their community as well. And so that deep sense of mission of, I'm somebody who's working and I want to feed people. You understand that that's where it's coming from. It's not just a commercial venture. It's a vocation. It's a mission. It's something they care deeply about. This is meaningful work. It can be very risky, and dangerous being out on the Great Lakes, right? There's no avoiding that. You can't be out on the Great Lakes without a measure of risk, right? And they take that risk both for that deep spirit of independence, I would say, which we wrote into the script. I drafted that script and didn't know where that would go. And it was interesting how it seemed to resonate with folks. And, sometimes you feel like you get to the heart of something and you don't know for sure if you're making it up or if what you heard was accurate. And it's been very rewarding to have them say that kind of it feels like it's right for our world. And so I'm extremely proud of the work that we did, especially in terms of helping these folks build relationships, and that their story their story right now is captured to some degree and being shared with the world. And that's really great.
Thanks for sharing that. And just to kind of back up a little bit, I mean, you had very little knowledge of where seafood came from or these industries before this campaign. You knew everything marketing, right? And you were able to capture these stories. And I think that that's really exciting and a really cool experience to share too with everyone.
And Lauren, that's only possible because these folks welcomed us in, right? Collectively. They said, yeah, come to our place. We'll tell you what the reality is, the good, bad, the ugly. And our job is to take that and be truthful about it, but present and exploit that truth in the best, most compelling possible way. And, and could always be said a little differently, but I think we're really proud of where we got to. And I'm really grateful that folks kind of let us in. So they just said, yeah, come take some videos, but don't bother us. We couldn't have done anything effective.
Yeah, they wanted someone to listen to their stories and share them. Great. Good question. Did you or do you have a plan to measure the direct impact of these campaigns on the businesses in aquaculture and commercial fishing?
So we don't have a comprehensive way to some degree to do that. We think that some of this is going to be long-term awareness building, and much of it is, how to put it, it's often indirect. In other words, there might be additional demand generated at restaurants, and that may or may not trickle all the way back to an increase in sales. In many cases, these folks sell all the product that they can produce already. So there isn't necessarily going to be an increase in output. And so it's actually a really good question that I don't have a good answer to. So the answer is there's some measurable impact that is a little bit more qualitative. Are you being heard? Are people connecting with you, right? Or is that continued sense of isolation still pervasive? It's more of a qualitative thing because the quantitative aspects have market forces and market structures on them that I think make it difficult to just say, hey, I sold 10% more this month or this year.
Great. Thanks, Matt. And so great work. And now we're kind of shifting back to the marketing assets. What was the approximate cost of the aquaculture demo tank and then the trailer that you also showed that's in development?
Yep. So, gosh, I hate to come up with things off the top of the head. So I don't know that I have the math on the aquaculture tank, and some of that depends on whether or not you include some of the things like the feedback sensors and control type things. The trailer is a little more clear, right? Depending on even that, there's still, I don't have like some of the costs to modify it in place. But if the physical trailer just itself, nothing else, is about a 5K trailer. That's a 6 by 8 foot trailer commercially available. Getting the wrapping done on it is about 2 or 3K, 2,700, I believe. Don't quote me on it, but that's about what I believe it is. But there's significant modifications to the inside to hold the aquaculture tank securely in place. One of the things we found is when we transported it down for the expo from the UP where we built it here, was that the pounding on I-75 was brutal, right? And so we needed to come back and reinforce and restructure the framework on it and redo some of the electronics, which had broken inside as a result of, I actually think it was 69 was worse going by south of Flint, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't want to pick on anybody's particular roads, but the pounding on some of the roads during construction periods is substantial. And so it really depends on if you said, I want to build a tank right here and it doesn't have to go anywhere. That's one thing. It's another thing if you want to make a road ready version and have that be able to tolerate being on the road.
Great. So all in all, how much would you put, just a guesstimate for all in all?
So I would guess it depends. So it depends. So depending on whether or not
rough estimate, Matt. Rough estimate.
So tank with control stuff in that range of like 10, 15, 20K, budget 20 if you had to, right? Trailer, another 5 plus extensive modification on the inside, and then another 3 to wrap it, somewhere in that range, sort of a thing. It doesn't mean you couldn't just get the tank and do something else. In other words, there's always a cheaper way to do something, but is it a good idea or not? We always face that question.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. And so there is one question that I'm happy to answer. Do you as participants have access to these decals and stickers? Yes, just send me an email, give me a phone call. I'll have a stack and probably be doing a tour with really the My Fresh Fish trailer full load of marketing assets, of physical marketing assets. Just feel free to reach out, and I will make a note that you were interested as well. There's one question, Matt. Can you remind us again, kind of taking away and pulling back out, remind us what the key research findings were? And yes, the reporting will be shared out afterwards. If you're interested in the slide deck, I believe we can have that available as well. But this is being recorded and will be shared. But, you know, kind of coming back out to the broader, what were some of the key findings from your work?
Sure. So 2 things. One is challenging that the producers are challenged. This is not an easy, neither of these businesses or forms of business. Commercial fishing is difficult and challenging in many complex ways. Some of it is, making the boat work. There's no, these boats were built a long time ago. They are not comfortable modern vessels by and large. And so some of it is understanding the true challenges, the true contextual, the full context of commercial fishing, and the full context of, or full as we could get, of aquaculture. What does it mean when the electricity goes out in the middle of January, right? That means you've got hours before all the fish are dead and you lose 2 years of work and you're out of business, right? If you're a fish farmer. Understanding that it's one thing to just say, oh, okay, yeah, but understanding what that means to these people's lives and how they have to live their lives in order to simplify as many systems as possible. And then on the commercial fishing side, what does it mean to be out on a boat? Getting up around 3:30, getting on the boat at about 5, right? Being out on the water before daylight. And then maybe you get back in the afternoon sometime. There's no bathroom on the boat. There's no facilities. These things are basically a shell, right? There's very little in the way of comfort or ergonomic engineering done for any of that workflow. So that's what I'm going to call the qualitative kind of almost social science type of work that marketing overlaps a lot with, is what's the reality of this here? What's the story? And how do we then make that story compelling? Because we can't tell it all, but what are the pieces that are compelling to a public? And then from the public, what do they care about with fish? I want it healthy and clean. I want it to taste good. And I hopefully have it available to me. And yeah, I wish it was coming from Michigan, or I would like it to be coming from Michigan. I would prefer that if I had a choice, right? And so all of those things. There's lots of structural, what I'm going to call structural challenges that both the fish farmers and the commercial fishers are up against. They're so complicated and full of nuanced history that after a year, I kind of get it, but I still feel like it's almost a study unto itself. And so the point here was to build as many relationships and conversations as we could so that everybody could understand each other a little bit better. And so we're trying to be a bridge builder between members of the public, folks involved in research and government agencies, and all sorts of people that could be talking to the fishers and fish farmers and understand their challenges better, and say, hey, we as a state would all be in a better position if we could increase the resilience of the people in these industries such that they're going to be here in the future for us, helping feed us.
Great. Thank you, Matt. And so we'll wrap up with one more question. And so you mentioned that you were pleasantly surprised with the interest in the aquaculture demo tank on Expo Day. What are some other pleasant surprises along the way, whether it was from the expo or otherwise?
Yeah, so pleasant surprises. To have a couple of folks that have never met me before meet me in the dark up in Loch LaBelle to climb onto the boat together and be welcomed into their fold and given a little seat in the tiny little cabin. Seeing how they use their cell phones, through the morning and would go out and take pictures. The pleasant surprises of that there was beauty in their work, even as it was difficult, right? And I think that's true for both of them. There's beauty in fish farming. It's a little different than commercial fishing, but that all of them seemed aware of the beauty in what they were doing and the beauty around them, and a great and deep appreciation for what the Great Lakes and what Michigan means to them to be from here. And that there's a reverence and appreciation for what they're doing and that they get to do that, but also that there is vulnerability there to everyone involved, and that the surprise of the courage that it takes to keep going in the face of some of those things, to come away with a greater sense of courage as a result of these people. That's a great surprise.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I don't know, Cindy, if you still have it pulled up, but Matt, yes, alluded to my little jingle. And so we'll leave it here so that it's stuck in everybody's head other than just mine. And so thank you all and have a great day celebrating Michigan Fresh Fish.
Fry it, bake it, smoke it, toast it, cut it, dress it, wrap it, roast it, cool it, eat it, celebrate it, my fresh fish.